मैं दानिश महाजन प्रोग्राम बदलता दौर में आपका स्वागत करता हूं। आज फिर एक नया एपिसोड। जैसा कि आप जानते हैं, हम एक्सेस एलाई द इनिशिएटिव ऑफ एनेबल मी एक्सेस के साथ कोलैबोरेशन में डीकंस्ट्रक्टिंग एक्सेसिबिलिटी एक सीरीज कर रहे हैं। आज एक और मिथ को बस्ट करेंगे एक्सेसिबिलिटी से रिलेटेड, और आज का जो हमारा टॉपिक रहने वाला है वो है इज एक्सेसिबिलिटी एक्सपेंसिव। तो ये बहुत सारे लोगों का सवाल रहता है, तो हम आज इसको डिकोड करेंगे। क्या वाकई एक्सेसिबिलिटी एक्सपेंसिव है? इस पर बात करने के लिए हमारे साथ जो चोपड़ा मैगावन जी है, जो फाउंडर हैं लतिका फाउंडेशन की। जानेंगे उनसे ही उनके बारे में, और आज एक और मिथ बस्ट करेंगे। जो जी, बहुत बहुत स्वागत रेडियो उड़ान पे।
धन्यवाद।
बताएं हमें थोड़ा सा अपने बारे में।
हाँ, तो मैं अमेरिकन हूँ। मैं हिंदुस्तानी के साथ शादी किया काफ़ी साल पहले, ऑलमोस्ट 50 years ago। हमारे 3 बच्चे हैं और हम देहरादून में रहते हैं। हमारी सबसे छोटी वाली मोय मोय, वो डिसेबल थी और उन्हीं के लिए मैंने लतिका शुरू किया। अभी हम 32 साल है और हम बहुत सारे बच्चों के साथ काम करते हैं। सब बच्चे विकलांग हैं, अलग अलग तरीके से। हम एक स्कूल चलाते हैं, एक इंक्लूसिव क्लब, एक ट्रेनिंग सेंटर, एक डायग्नोस्टिक्स एंड असेसमेंट सेंटर। सो सब कुछ जन्म से अडल्टहुड तक हम सर्विसेज देते हैं। और साथ साथ हमने अभी एक बहुत अच्छा सा बिल्डिंग बना दिया। एक्सेसिबिलिटी के बारे में हमने बहुत सोचा, इस बिल्डिंग को कैसे बना सकते हैं ताकि सभी के लिए सही होगा। तो इसलिए मैं थोड़ा सा एक्सपर्ट हूँ अभी एक्सेसिबिलिटी के ऊपर, लेकिन काफ़ी अलग तरीके से देखते हैं।
ओके, तो आइए इस मिथ को बस्ट करते हैं। आज का जो हमारा टॉपिक है, मेरा पहला सवाल रहेगा आपसे, क्या पीपल ऑफन थिंक एक्सेसिबिलिटी कॉस्ट मोर? व्हाट डू यू थिंक, इट्स अ मिथ और रियलिटी?
एक्सेसिबिलिटी डज कॉस्ट मोर, लेकिन मुझे लगता है वो सवाल ठीक नहीं है, क्योंकि अगर हम एक्सपेंसेस के ऊपर देखते हैं, we're going down the path that is defensive. We're basically saying we don't have the right to this, but we still want to do it. We don't ask that question about anything else in a building. We don't say, is electricity expensive? Is providing indoor plumbing expensive? These are things that we just take for granted. They have to be in a building. We have to have toilets, we have to have sinks, we have to have lights that can come on and off, we need fans. Nobody quarrels about that, and nobody says, is it expensive? It's just taken for granted. The same thing is true about accessibility. If a building doesn't work for everybody, then it's not a building worth having. And it costs what it costs. And I think we have to take control of this argument. We cannot be trying to sell the idea of an accessible building and, relying on people's good nature, relying on their kindness, their sense of charity or sense of justice. It doesn't matter what you think about it. It's the law. The National Building Code is very clear that accessibility has to be built into every building. So we don't have the right to debate about it even. It costs what it costs. And whatever it costs, if we want to build a building, that's what we have to come up with in terms of money. And if we can't include accessibility, we are not ready to build a building, and we should get out of the business.
I agree. But जो भी आप कह रही हैं, can you quote any research or data behind your answers?
Well, the data is clear that if you have a wider corridor, if you have a ramp that's according to the code, if you have fully accessible toilets, they are going to cost more than if you don't do that. But that's just sheer logic. There's no need to justify it. As I say, it costs what it costs. And if we are following the law, then we just have to follow it. We have to provide all of the things that the National Building Code requires us to. And you can do it in less expensive ways. Some accessible buildings are very deluxe. You don't have to go that route. You can do the most basic thing that you can, but it will cost you more than not doing it. just as it would cost you less if you didn't put a roof on your building or you didn't put glass in your windows. But nobody would do that. So the argument doesn't require data, it doesn't require research, it requires following the law. And that's what I'm arguing here, that we are unnecessarily creating work for ourselves when we keep trying to justify our need for an accessible world. We don't have to do it. The law has already been determined for us, and whether we like it or not, we have to comply with it. You think of so many examples, like people don't say, is it more expensive to send girls to school or to keep them at home? Now, obviously, it's more expensive to send your girls to school, but that's not a choice we get to make. That is the law. Every child has the right to an education and have to be sent to school. You can't keep your kid at home. And that's the same logic that I'm trying to offer here, that we have the law on our side. People have worked very hard to make sure that the law exists to cover everybody. We don't have to make a special case for accessibility. I feel really weird actually bragging about our building being accessible. It's like you would feel bragging that you have electricity. It's stupid, really, when you think about it. Of course it should be accessible. Of course it should work for everybody, because that's what the law says we have to provide.
Law says many things. We have so many policies. It's not about law, it's about implementation.
That too.
You will have to brag about your accessibility because none is following that. If
Agreed.
everybody is following that, then you don't need to brag about it.
Right.
So that's why we are asking these questions. Now,
Yeah.
explain us, do you think accessibility also depends upon timing? If we plan early, it costs lesser. If we
Absolutely. Absolutely. We made
so
a
explain
mistake.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we made a mistake in our building. Our architects thought that the slope of the ramp was 1:12. They didn't read the next paragraph of the code, where it said that if you're going beyond the first floor, it has to be much more of a gentle slope. It has to be 1:20. We had already started the construction of the ramp, so that had to be torn down and we had to start over again. Now, luckily, this was discovered early and I think we wasted about 5 lakhs. But when you retrofit, when you go right up to the roof and then realize that certain things are not in place, it is definitely going to be more expensive. So to comply with the law, it is best to do it right at the beginning and to work on your budgets with that in mind, that you're not cutting corners, you're not making doorways too narrow, you're making all of your bathrooms such that, not all of them, I mean, you could have some of your bathrooms be accessible. These are choices that you can make. So you can say every bathroom in my building is going to be accessible, or you can say on every floor there will be 3 bathrooms that are accessible. These are things that, depending on budget, you have that latitude. And if you plan it right from the beginning, you are going to definitely cut your costs.
Can you give some example? And I'm also adding a follow-up question. So can you bring clarity on the thoughts for our listeners? What are the accessibility features are truly expensive and which are cheaper? They give you, full value to what you spend.
So I think lifts are expensive, and ramps may be the alternative, as long as it's not a very tall building, because it's a lot of work going, and it takes a long time if you're going up a ramp all the way to, say, the 14th floor. But lifts are expensive. And if you're building a building of 2 stories, you could consider just doing a ramp rather than adding a lift. Acoustics are expensive. And that is something I really regret about our building. I wish we had spent a lot more money and a lot more thought on putting those acoustics in place, because now that we're in the building, I really see the limitations that we have, not having invested in that. And as Peter Gibson pointed out to me when he visited, he said it's very expensive to do it retroactively. Had you done it at the very beginning, it would have been much cheaper. So that's something that I think we all need to think through, because acoustics makes such a difference in the comfort of a building, the ability to have conversations. There's so many aspects to acoustics that we need to think about, and we unfortunately didn't do much of it. Other things that are considerably expensive, I think the quality of the fixtures, like toilets and sinks, and these are all things that are, there's a wide range. Even with fans, you can have a quiet fan, but it's more expensive than one of the typical noisy ones. But as long as you've got your basic requirements met, I think you can call yourself an accessible building. It's how luxurious do you want to go? What things are essential? What things are not? And like anything, you can have air conditioning in every room, or you can have it only on the top floors. You can have beautiful blinds. You can have cheap blinds. There are so many ways to look at the insides and the exteriors.
What are the accessibility features are really cheap and give you best value of your money?
I think ramps. I think tactile signage. It's not that expensive. Door handles, very important for people to have ease of access, and it's often just a design choice. It's not that they're more expensive or less expensive. It's which one is going to work for different kinds of disabilities, and choosing the one that is appropriate doesn't cost more. It's just using your head and choosing the right ones. Windows that are easy for people to open. Again, it's often just a style choice, and you can choose a style that's going to be much more expensive, but do the same thing. So I think those kinds of things, you just have to think about what it is that you need to have in terms of accessibility, and then choose the least expensive one that you can find. And everything has such a wide range now. When my husband and I built our house in 2006, we had far fewer options than we do now. And you can really provide an accessible building now without it costing the earth.
मैं जब भी एक्सेसिबिलिटी एक्सपर्ट से बात करता हूँ, जहाँ इस सीरीज में भी जो हम कर रहे हैं अनेबल मी एक्सेस के साथ, सभी एक्सपर्ट एक बात बोलते हैं कि वी शुड सी एक्सेसिबिलिटी एज एन इन्वेस्टमेंट, नॉट एज ए कॉस्ट. फिर वो ये भी कहते हैं कि इसके लॉन्ग टर्म में बहुत बेनिफिट होता है बिजनेसेस को, गवर्नमेंट को. अगर ऐसा है तो फिर लोग इसको इनकॉर्पोरेट क्यों नहीं करते? तो दो सवाल हैं. एक, आप कैसे डिफाइन करेंगे कि ये इन्वेस्टमेंट होनी चाहिए, कॉस्ट नहीं होनी चाहिए, और किस तरह के बेनिफिट लॉन्ग टर्म में मिलते हैं बिजनेसेस को अगर हमारी सारे बिजनेस बिल्डिंग्स एक्सेसिबल है? और अगर सच में बेनिफिशियल है तो फिर लोग करते क्यों नहीं इसको?
Well, I think a lot of businesses, a lot of people who are building infrastructure, they are really thinking in the short term. That's the nature of a lot of businesses. They're cutting corners because it's hard to come up with that much money at one time. Even though they may acknowledge that in the long run, this is going to be good for my business, it's going to be good for my reputation, many more customers will be able to come. For many people, that feels like a luxury, that we don't have the cash right now to put all these things in place. And they don't see that there's a huge demographic of disabled people who will be consumers and customers and clients who will be able to work in your building or patronize your building, come to your hotel, come to your resort, come to your school, to your college. Right now, that takes vision, because we don't have that situation in India. You see very few disabled people going to college or going to fancy hotels, or actually more going to fancy hotels than going to ordinary hotels. And people don't realize how many disabled people exist, so they don't see that demographic as being important to cater to. And I think, my experience with our own contractor was he was always looking at the bottom line. He was always trying to cut corners, and we had to be on him all the time to make sure that he did building according to the plan and didn't cut corners, didn't make the doorways slightly narrower, didn't, these are just things that are kind of in people's blood to save money.
क्या जो बिल्डिंग एक्सेसिबल नहीं है, जब एक्सपर्ट आते हैं, आर्किटेक्ट आते हैं, is there any hidden cost when things are not accessible?
Oh yeah, absolutely. One is the constant danger of not being able to keep people safe in a building, and that will be on you. If you are the person who built that building or you own that building and you have a person at a high level who isn't able to get down in the case of an emergency. Say you only have lifts and you don't have ramps. Whose fault is it if this person is left behind in a fire or in an evacuation? There are costs that I think we can't even imagine, people not coming to your place because they can't get into it or because they know that there is no bathroom that's available to them. And so they avoid going there. And that means you lose their business. It means that you lose their family's business. It's, there's so many places that people just cannot avail because they're not accessible. And they find the ones that are, or they stay at home. And, these are hidden costs. They're people who could be spending their money in your place, and they're not. There are people who you could hire who are exactly the right fit for the job that you need done, but they can't access your building. And it's in the same way, this isn't the builder's responsibility, but when we look around us, our building is accessible, but the road outside our building is a nightmare. I just came navigating through massive flooding to get here. And, we have to think about all those aspects of things. Parents not able to come. And this is where we have an accessible building. So we really have to think more broadly about what access means. It's not good enough that just our building is adequate. It's got to be much more widespread than that.
Absolutely. Can you share any example where you have seen any public project or public building where accessibility is added later without raising too much cost?
No, I'm not aware of anything that was done at the end of a project. I know people put in lifts. That might be, and that a lift costs what it costs. It's not dependent on the building. You can have it tacked on to the end of something, I suppose. I'm not really aware of that, no.
One myth with regard to accessibility cost you want to bust?
The one I started with, that we have to justify it. I think we simply have to begin to talk about it as a right and not try and convince people that this is the right thing to do. It is the law. And I really feel strongly about this, that we have the law on our side and we have to proceed with that confidence. That we're not asking for favors, we are not asking for anything special. We are asking for the same rights that any citizen of the country has, and it's in the law.
Will non-negotiable norms with regard to the judgment of Rajiv Rastogi, if you are aware, will change the ground reality in India?
Yes, I think, and there are so many layers to this, of course. There is so much people turning a blind eye, inspectors coming but not really investigating or getting paid off, or the whole system has to change to make this happen. Like with anything else, like so many of the safety norms in buildings, corruption being everywhere. I think if we don't make all of these things non-negotiable, they're not going to happen. So there has to be vigilance, there has to be inspections, there have to be people committed to doing their job as public servants. And architects have to be better educated. Contractors have to be held accountable. There are so many checks and balances, but they're always negotiable. If they're non-negotiable and you pay the price, people should go to jail when they build buildings that are not safe, that are not accessible. There should be consequences for that. And I think that term itself tells you what would happen. If it's non-negotiable, you can't get out of it. You just have to do it that way. And I just came back from a holiday abroad, and I was just so impressed with the level of compliance all through little stores, little restaurants where disabled people were happily engaged. They were working there, they were enjoying meals, they were shopping, they were going to movies, and because the law says so. It's not because people are better or nicer or more considerate there. It's just the law is enforced. And that's what we have to come to. Non-negotiable is the only way to do it.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Thank you so much for your time and views.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
तो लिसनर्स, बात की आज हमने जो चोपड़ा जी से, जिन्होंने बताया कि एक्सेसिबिलिटी एक्सपेंसिव और नॉट। कैसा लगा आपको शो? कमेंट करके बताइएगा। ये सीरीज हम कर रहे हैं इन कोलैबोरेशन विद एक्सेस एलाई, द इनिशिएटिव ऑफ एनेबल मी एक्सेस। अगले सप्ताह आएंगे एक और टॉपिक के साथ, एक और टॉपिक को करेंगे डीकंस्ट्रक्ट। तब तक सुनते रहिए रेडियो डन, अ फ्लाइट ऑफ लाइफ। बाय बाय।
फ्रेंड्स सबको चाहिए, कंपेनियनशिप की जरूरत सबको होती है और सबको चाहिए अपने मनपसंद का लाइफ पार्टनर। लेकिन पर्सन्स विद डिसेबिलिटीज के लिए ये इतना आसान नहीं होता। एक तो सोशल स्टिग्मा और ऊपर से ज्यादातर एप्स इनएक्सेसिबल। अब हो जाइए टेंशन फ्री, क्योंकि आपके लिए लॉन्च हो चुकी है इंडिया की ओनली इंक्लूसिव और एक्सेसिबल सोशल ऐप। जी हाँ, बड़ी अप नेटवर्क ऐप, जहां आप बना सकते हैं फ्रेंड्स, ढूंढ सकते हैं कंपेनियन और पा सकते हैं अपना लाइफ पार्टनर भी। तो आज ही डाउनलोड कीजिए बड़ी अप नेटवर्क ऐप और बढ़ाए एक कदम दोस्ती की ओर। अवेलेबल इन हिंदी एंड इंग्लिश। ज्यादा जानकारी के लिए आप ईमेल कर सकते हैं admin@buddyyup.network पर। बड़ी अप नेटवर्क, अब दोस्त ढूंढने की छुट्टी।
अब आईआईटी का सपना सिर्फ सपना नहीं रहेगा। बहुत से पर्सन्स विद डिसेबिलिटीज आईआईटी में पढ़ना चाहते हैं, लेकिन एक्सेसिबल स्टडी मटेरियल, सही मेंटरिंग और एक्सपर्ट गाइडेंस ना मिलने के कारण ये सपना अधूरा रह जाता है। अब आपके सपने को पूरा करेगा CSRL सुपर 30 रेजिडेंशियल मेंटोरशिप प्रोग्राम। अगर आप एक डिसेबल्ड स्टूडेंट हैं और फ्री मेंटरिंग, एक्सपीरियंस्ड फैकल्टी, रेजिडेंशियल फैसिलिटी और बेहतरीन गाइडेंस चाहते हैं, तो आज ही जुड़े CSRL सुपर 30 से और अपने सपने को साकार कीजिए। सिर्फ 30 सीट्स अवेलेबल हैं, देर ना करें, आज ही रजिस्टर करें। कॉल 7428582416। ईमेल करें shivamsharma@csrl.in।
10 years, one landmark law, millions of hopes. As the RPWD Act 2016 completes 10 years, Radio Udan, in collaboration with Mission Accessibility and Vidhi Center for Legal Policy, proudly presents a special series, 10 years of RPWD. 10 years, 10 eminent voices, 10 defining conversations. What has changed in the last decade? What progress have we made? And what challenges still remain? From rights to accessibility, from education to employment. Join us for honest, insightful discussions on the journey of disability inclusion. With the support of Dr. Sunil Pehlajani. Coming soon only on Radio Udan. 10 years of RPWD. Because rights should be lived every day, not just written in law.